Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 641. 641. December the 21st, 2018. Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, let's get after it. Well, it looks like General Mattis has notified Trump that he is going to be retiring at the end of the year. Now, I read his letter, which is, of course, public. And when you look at that letter, if you look at the very last paragraph, he makes this statement where he says, "You have a right to have a Secretary of Defense whose views are better aligned with yours, blah, 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 blah." So, if you remember, we've been hearing that Mattis may be going, and he's pretty much denied those rumors over the past several months. But we can see clearly here that he is going to retire, and based on this last paragraph, as well as the whole letter really, kind of lays out his views and things like that. And then you get to the end, and he says this: it leads you to believe that there was a difference here in opinion between Mattis and Trump about how to use the military. And of course, this comes on the heels of Trump announcing that he is going to pull the troops out of Syria. So I think that these two things are connected. I think there was probably a disagreement on this, and that I'm just speculating here, that Trump pulling the troops out of Syria may be what forced Mattis, probably a disagreement there, and probably is what forced his hand. Fine and dandy. Good. See you later. I do understand the issue in Syria with the Kurds. I feel bad for the Kurds. They got a raw deal. But I don't remember anybody complaining about George Herbert Walker Bush back in the first Gulf War when he actually motivated the Kurds to rise up against Saddam Hussein, leading them to believe that the American government was going to come in and support them. And so they did rise up against Saddam Hussein. And then Bush pulled the rug out from underneath them and didn't send them any support, and they got crushed. Don't remember anybody being upset with George Herbert Walker Bush when he did that, but all of a sudden today, all over the liberal media, suddenly the liberal media are war hawks. Suddenly the Democrats are war hawks. And of course the neoconservatives are fit to be tied, especially Lindsey Graham. So I guess maybe the honeymoon may be kind of over with Lindsey Graham and Trump. And they're saying, well, we're turning Syria over to Russia, Iran, and, whoever else. There's a lot going on here. I don't have time to go into it, but Al-Qaeda and ISIS are the enemies of Bashar al-Assad. They're also the enemies of Putin, and they are also the enemies of Iran. So why not let the Iranians, the Russians, and Bashar al-Assad fight out Al-Qaeda and ISIS? I mean, we've wiped out 95% of them. There's very few left. They're just in a few small pockets. All the major areas they've been driven out of. And it's costing us a fortune. And we just have that presence there, which bad things can happen as a result. Not to mention, the Israelis have that situation well under control. And the only thing that's going to happen is that the Israelis are simply going to work closer with the Russians. And that's what's going to happen. The Israelis are going to say, okay, well, the Americans have pulled out. Then they'll, talk to Putin. I mean, Putin has a pretty decent working relationship with Israel. I mean, they're not enemies or anything. They have issues over Syria, and they'll continue to have issues over Syria, but it involves a lot of things having to do with energy and building pipelines. And essentially what Trump has done is he has basically said, okay, well, I'm not going to occupy this country for the next 200 years so that we can build pipelines there. Trump has another plan. So it's a good move by Trump. I support him 100%. Yes, we need to be out of Syria, and there's a lot of other places we need to be out of. Rand Paul is one of the few people who came to his defense, which is expected. But, Trump, he's taking a beating on this, but I don't think he cares. Because I think that Trump knows that the majority of the American people are with him on this, including a lot of Democrats. Now, their party leaders, and keep in mind, a lot of these Democrats, like Pelosi and the rest, they make a lot of money through the military-industrial complex. Nancy Pelosi's husband is a defense contractor, essentially, makes a lot of money from the defense industry. So a lot of these Democrats are just as tied into the military-industrial complex as a lot of Republicans are. It's not just a Republican thing. In fact, it's more of a neocon, neoliberal thing. So, well done, President Trump. Glad we're out of Syria. I'm glad the troops are coming home for Christmas. And let the Israelis and the Russians figure it out. James E. Wolf has received 2 months prison for his leaking. Of course, we're talking about the fact that he leaked the Carter Page FISA warrant to Allie Watkins, his girlfriend, who was at BuzzFeed at the time, along with 5 other media organizations. And we have no idea who she leaked it to. But what's the important story here is that Wolf, of course, didn't get charged with the leaking of the classified information. He got charged for lying. And he got 2 months. So it's a little stiffer penalty than you normally get for lying. Like Papaglopoulos got, what, 2 weeks or something. But the judge gave him a slightly harsher penalty on the lying part. But the part about leaking the classified information he was never charged on, that was all swept under the rug. And I don't know this, but I have my suspicions that there was a lot of people trying to protect Wolf, writing letters on his behalf. And I can't prove this, but I believe that Mark Warner, possibly even Clapper, and maybe some other people, maybe Brennan, maybe urged Wolf or told him they would provide cover for him to do this leak. I kind of think he may have been acting on someone else's behalf or told he would have protection. And it wasn't the first time he had been doing this either. So it's hard to say exactly what's buried here, but a lot of things were buried in the James Wolf case. Many things were buried, and they had to do something, so they hit him on the lying charge. And they bury everything else. But there was an awful lot of people going to bat for him, and an awful lot of people concerned. And particularly Mark Warner and Clapper, 2 guys who wrote letters to the judge asking for leniency. So unfortunately, this is another one of those things that happen in the swamp that's just going to go away, and a lot of things that we probably should know that they don't want us to know are going to be buried. They will be buried. And there's so many scandals to dig up that you simply can't get to them all. So this one is probably one that will remain buried. There's other scandals that need to be unearthed. This one will probably remain buried. But I have no doubt that Warner was somehow involved in some way with this leak. But Warner may not be out of the woods because there's other issues that he was involved in having to do with the dossier, having to do with Spygate things, which I do hope will come out at some point. Well, Trump has told Paul Ryan and McCarthy that he will not sign the short-term resolution without the wall funding. So Ryan and McCarthy say that they will try get back to work and try to get the $5 billion in the bill by Friday. There's only $1.3 billion there now. So Trump has thrown down the gauntlet. He's saying, I want the $5 billion or I'm not going to sign the short-term resolution. And this has forced Ryan and McCarthy to go back and try to get it done. Now, they'll get the votes. I'm sure they're there. They just didn't want them. They'll get the votes, which is what Trump wants. Now, he knows he still has to get 60 votes in the Senate. But he knows, even though McConnell's not really on board, he knows McConnell will be under serious pressure to get the Republican votes that he needs. And he's going to come up short because you're going to have, you still got Corker officially and Flake officially in the mix. Murkowski, Collins, still in the mix. Probably not going to get it. He's going to need Democrat votes, and he's not going to get them. This thing is going to stall in the Senate. It'd be my guess, unless Trump can bring enough pressure on about 10 or 12 Democrats, at least 10, probably more like 12 or 13, that he's going to have to bring pressure on, like Tester and some other people. He's going to have to bring pressure on them in order to in order to get the 60 votes. And I don't know how he gets them. Maybe he's got a plan. I don't know. But it may just be, his plan is to take it all the way to the Senate, have it not pass, and then Trump can go out and say, okay, well, I've got, 44 or 45 of the 47 Republicans, or what have you, or, 47 of the 51 Republicans. We're getting no Democrat votes, and he will focus on the Democrats and try to put this on them and try to apply the pressure on them, saying these are the people who are keeping us from having border security. These are the reason that we can't get this done. This is why we have a government shutdown. So Trump's going to try to shift the politics to the Democrats. Probably he's going to focus on the ones in the border states and Democrats who are in pretty much red states like Tester. So whether or not this is a political win or not, I don't know. Maybe in the long term it's a political win. In the short term, it's probably bad for both. In the short term, I think Trump could face some blowback, but I think in the long run, it is probably fits into Trump's strategy in the long run that Democrats are not serious about border security. So I think he's willing to take the short term couple of weeks hit if he can get through the long term. And I think he kind of wants this fight, by the way. It just seems like he does, because I'm pretty sure that $5 billion is not a lot of money when you look at the amount of money that's, say, in the defense budget, 700 and something billion or something. You know that he could use the Army Corps of Engineers to construct wall and could easily get $5 billion there. And that's probably what he'll end up doing to get it done. But he wants to fight, and it's pretty clear he wanted this fight. He either wanted to force the Democrats to cave, which he probably knew they wouldn't, or he wants this issue. He'll get the wall probably through having the military build it, the Corps of Engineers, or through some other way. He'll shift the money around. He'll probably find a way to get it done. Democrats will raise a lot of hell, probably some Republicans too, but he'll find a way to get it done, probably. It'll be my guess, to get the $5 billion. But I just think he wants to fight, and I think he thinks that this is a winning issue for Republicans and for him personally in 2020. And I think that that's probably what's driving a lot of this. But either way, I do agree that it's a winning issue for Republicans. It's just a shame that so many Republicans, the leadership specifically, are really not for it at all. And that is probably the tragedy of all this. But it's exposing, Trump's essentially has been exposing the Republican leadership. And hopefully that will have some effect that when Paul Ryan is gone, that Kevin McCarthy will not be able to do the same. The pressure will be too great on him, and he won't be able to play the same game that Ryan did. So I think there's a lot of different political maneuvers that are happening here all at once. And I think that they're more long-term than they are short-term. But we'll keep following the story, but as of tomorrow night, or Friday, or by the time you see this video today, by Friday night, that's the deadline, I think Friday night at midnight or something. If they don't have 60 votes in the Senate, and I doubt that they will, I'd be surprised if they do, then yeah, they're going to be a government shutdown. But 87% of the government is funded automatically. So we're only talking about 13%. Not a big deal. I think it'll be a winning issue for Trump in the long run. In the short term, he might get a little skinned up, but the Democrats get hit on this too. This hurts them too. So I think they both feel pain and get hurt in the short run, but in the long run, better, it'll probably work against Democrats, work for Trump, and for his reelection. That's my political analysis. Well, of course, we know that Mr. Magoo, Senator Magoo, the late Senator Magoo, lied through his teeth. Didn't have much time to talk about it yesterday, but of course we know from the lawsuit, and that's now settled in Florida, BuzzFeed being sued by Mr. Gubarev, who owns Webzilla XBT Holdings, the judge siding with BuzzFeed, saying that the article was newsworthy, and the fact that as soon as the article was published, the dossier was published, Gubarev's attorneys contacted BuzzFeed and said, hey, your allegations that my client was behind the hacking or whatever connected to Russia, total lies, all wrong. remove that or I'm going to sue you. In fact, we're probably going to sue you anyway, which is exactly what happened. And BuzzFeed did. They did apologize. They did pull the original article. They did remove the part about Webzilla XBT Holdings being the party responsible for the actual hacking as part of the Trump-Russia collusion thing. And so the fact that they did make an effort to correct themselves and the fact that the judge feels it was newsworthy, they're off the hook. But Christopher Steele is not, because he's the one that put it in there. And what's going to be very interesting is when we find out exactly who it was, which of these intermediaries or collectors it was that told Steele that this was the case. Because we don't know that yet, and that case is still ongoing. I think that we will certainly find out at some point who it was that told Christopher Steele that Mr. Gubarev's company was the company that actually did the physical hacking for Putin or Trump or whoever. We'll probably get the name, and I will not be the least bit surprised to find out that it's not a Russian at all, that it might be somebody with one of the Rotten Reverend Clinton's goons or someone within the intelligence community who maybe passed that information along. Not a Russian at all. That's my guess. That's going to be my guess. But the fact of the matter is, once David Kramer's name first leaked out, and we learned about the where Kramer and Magoo went to this Halifax security deal there in Canada, the whole 9 yards. That's when media people first started asking Magoo about whether or not he provided the dossier to BuzzFeed. And he flatly rejected it, denied it. In other words, he flatly lied. Senator Magoo lied. And let's not forget, if you go back into my timeline, you will see that Magoo was actively involved in this going all the way back to late 2015. He was working with this working group in the Senate, which was put together as a result of the information that Alexandra Chalupa, the Ukrainian and DNC operative, was getting. She was giving it to the DNC, feeding in that stuff, and then they decided in the Senate to put together this little working group, a bunch of Democrats working on this Trump-Russia collusion narrative, and McCain joined that working group. So there's a lot more than just leaking, giving the dossier to Comey, having his right-hand man give it to BuzzFeed, which they then published and started the whole thing rolling. So it was really Senator Magoo ordering Kramer to share the dossier with BuzzFeed. Once it's published, that started the whole ball rolling. Senator Magoo. And a lot more will come out, I'm sure, will expose Senator Magoo. His family's not going to like it, but that's the way it goes. Senator Magoo lied his ass off. He repeatedly denied being the source of the dossier to BuzzFeed, and he was. But we also know that Kramer did not just give it to BuzzFeed. He also shared the dossier with other reporters. They do not name them, but the judge says in the statement that Kramer shared the dossier with BuzzFeed and other reporters, and he also briefed Victoria F. the EU Newland. He briefed Victoria Newland. And of course, she got briefed on it once before in Europe by Mr. Weiner from the State Department. And we also learned a lot about who Steele gave the dossier to. Of course, we know he gave it to David Kramer on behalf of Senator Magoo. He also gave it to a British intelligence officer named Alex Younger. Younger. And what did Mr. Younger do? He shared it with the British intelligence community. And then they briefed Theresa May and Boris Johnson in December of 2016. So Steele shared it with this British intelligence officer, who then shared it with the people there in British intelligence, and then they shared it with Theresa May and Boris Johnson in December 2016, the dossier. We also know that Steele gave it to Ms. Wallender, Obama, who's on Obama's, she was in the chain of command under Susan Rice at the National Security Council. So it was also given to essentially Obama, but given to this Ms. Wallender, who was at the National Security Council, which Susan Rice was head of. And I'm sure it made its way up the chain to Susan Rice and then to Obama. He also gave it to someone named Adam Kinzinger, who is a Republican congressman from Illinois. And last but not least, Christopher Steele shared the dossier with this guy, John Burks, B-U-R-K-S, Paul Ryan's chief of staff. Christopher Steele is going to find himself here in the United States answering a lot of questions, probably on C-SPAN. He's got a lot of questions, man, for him. And he already told us in his deposition from a couple of days ago that his job, he was paid by, and remember, this is very important, he said in this deposition, very, very important detail, he was paid by Perkins Coie. We've been led up to believe at this time that he was brought in by Confusion GPS. No, no, no. He was paid directly by Perkins Coie, who was working, the law firm working for Hillary Clinton. And if you look at the way he words that statement, it makes it pretty obvious that there was definitely a personal relationship between Hillary Clinton and Christopher Steele, using Perkins Coie as an intermediary, most likely, but still very possible that there was personal contact between Christopher Steele and Hillary Clinton. He needs to be placed under oath in front of a grand jury and asked if he knows Hillary or Bill Clinton, if he ever spoke to personally Bill or Hillary Clinton on any matters, and if so, what and when. Well, Pelosi's herd of wild cats is already unmanageable. She hasn't even taken over as speaker yet, and she's already ran into her first major problem with Ocasio-Cortez and the leftist, the hard leftist. It appears that Cortez is leading a group of 40 Democrats, and they want to create a special House committee that will be pursuing something called a New Green Deal. A New Green Deal. Now, this is going to drive Pelosi crazy, and a lot of Democrats. Why? Because a lot of Democrats, including Pelosi, get a lot of money from fossil fuel companies. Fossil fuel companies. Not only that, if you remember, in the midterms and in 2016, when they showed issues, how important they were to people voting, in both the 2016 and midterm elections, the green energy issue or climate change issue was so far down the bottom of the list that it wasn't even in the top 30 or 40. I mean, it is way, 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 way down. Nobody cares. But Ocasio-Cortez wants, along with these 40 Democrats, they want to make the green energy the number one, along with healthcare, Medicare for all, the top two planks of their platform for 2020. And this is devastating to a lot of Democrats like Pelosi, because they can't go out there and take the fossil fuel money and at the same time that they're trying to run this deal. So this is going to create some serious headaches for Madam Botox. And as I said before, after they won the midterms, I said Pelosi is going to be so busy trying to manage this herd of wild cats, crazy leftist loonies that she's now got, that's probably going to keep her so busy she won't have time to do anything else but try to keep these crazy Democrats in line. Because I hope they do it. Pelosi's not that stupid. She knows that if they make Medicare for all and green energy a new green deal, if they make that the two top planks of their platform in 2020, they'll get demolished. Absolutely demolished. Good luck, Nancy. Well, William Barr is coming under major attack on Thursday because of a memo that was discovered a memo that he wrote to Rodenstein, where he explained to Rodenstein why allowing Uncle Bob the Executioner to pursue an obstruction charge against Trump, or even an investigation for firing Comey, would have very serious negative consequences over the long term and even in the short term. And he laid out the reasons why. And as a result of this memo, the left-wing media is going crazy about Barr, and they're going to want him to recuse himself. He's not going to. Can I assure you of that? He's not going to. We also have Matthew Whitaker. Now, one of the reasons why he's been quiet and hasn't really been able to do much, and Rodenstein's been running the show, is because right after Trump appointed him, the Senate Judiciary, I think, or one of the Senate committees filed an ethics complaint. And so it kind of put him in a situation where he really couldn't really do anything as far as overseeing the Mueller investigation, because this ethics investigation was going on, trying to force him to recuse himself from the Mueller, overseeing the Mueller investigation. But today, or I should say Thursday, the Ethics Committee came back with a ruling stating that there's no conflict of interest, there's no issue at all, and that Whitaker certainly can oversee the Mueller investigation. And at this point, his office, Whitaker's office, has stated that yes, they understand the ruling, and he of course will be taking over overseeing the Mueller investigation, and that he will not recuse himself. Will not recuse himself. So Matthew Whitaker is getting ready to step it up, hopefully, and or at least ways he will be able to keep it in check. And Rodenstein will have to turn it over to Whitaker pretty much full time now, because Whitaker has been cleared by the Ethics Committee, and he is stating he is not going to recuse himself. Well, we have Beto O'Rourke. He's not liberal enough for a lot of these. They're doing polls to find out who's the front-running Democrats. Beto O'Rourke is fallen out of favor because apparently he takes a hell of a lot of money from hedge funds. And so it appears that the knives are out on Beto. He's not liberal enough. We're finding out now that, of course, most of you remember the fiasco of the Alabama Senate seat primary and general election that took place between Doug Jones, a Democrat, and Roy Moore, trying to win Sessions' old Alabama Senate seat. And we're now learning that there was a fake Russia collusion program being run by the Democrats. Two campaigns, actually. One running in the primary to divide Republicans, and then once Roy Moore won, then they ran a fake Russian op to defeat Roy Moore. What they did is they created a swarm of Russian bots that began following Moore on his Twitter. This operation was $100,000 to put this operation in place. Joe Trippi, a former Clinton hatchet man, was in the mix putting this together. The company that did this was paid the $100,000. Was this Alabama Project is what it was called, set up by this man Jonathan Morgan, another Democratic operative. He owns a small cybersecurity firm. So Morgan describes the project as a false flag operation against Moore. Keep in mind, that was a very close race. Excuse me. Jones won 49.9%. 49.9 to 48.4. Very close. This came out in the Senate Intelligence Committee report. And it was, this story appeared today in the New York Times. So they set up a web page with a bunch of fake Russian bots, and then they have them following Roy Moore. And that was followed by several newspaper stories, or news stories. Several news stories followed that. Obviously, they were part of the play. Followed that, saying that Roy Moore was being followed by Russians. You see. So the Russian collusion delusion, not just deployed against Trump, but other people, in this case, Roy Moore himself. Probably could have as close as that was, it probably could have been the deciding factor in that election. There you go. Trump derangement syndrome in the advanced stages. We're now seeing that we're 2 years into Trump derangement syndrome. We are now starting to see the beginning of the advanced stages of what happens to people who have TDS. Obviously, the election meltdown night, that was bad. We knew it was bad from the beginning. But apparently, as you get deeper into this disease, TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, as you get deeper into it, it just gets worse and worse. Very debilitating disease. And it appears now it's fully engulfed, Congressman Louis Gutierrez. He had a meltdown the other day in a committee hearing where Kristen Nielsen was going through the immigration issue in the wall and all the other things. And Gutierrez goes on this rant where in that rant he says that Jesus would have perished if Trump's border wall policies were in place when Jesus was born. That's right, he says that Jesus would have perished if Trump's border policies were in place when Jesus was born. And he went off on a rant, got so upset that he called Nielsen a liar and then stormed out of the hearing. So we're now seeing the advanced stages of Trump derangement syndrome. And as far as Mr. Gutierrez is concerned, well, Mr. Gutierrez, the idea that Jesus would have perished if Trump's border wall was there in place, or Trump's policies were in place back at the time that Jesus was born. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Gutierrez, if you and other Democrats who think like you would have been around at the time of Jesus, Jesus probably would have been never heard from. And probably because you would have forced Mary to have an abortion. You would have forced Mary to have an abortion. And Jesus never even would have been born. There you go, Mr. Gutierrez. How about that? Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you guys. Have a good night. Bye.